So I had a miscarriage this week, a couple days ago, actually. And let me tell you about it. So I miscarried at about 8 weeks, and I had found out that I was pregnant maybe around 4 to 5 weeks. So just barely, because I started bleeding, but not a lot, just like spotting. But I've never had that before, and this would have been my fourth pregnancy. And so I have 3 other children. And so because of that, I immediately called my midwife, and she was like, "Oh, it could be normal, but maybe you want to get checked out." And I do have a history of low progesterone. So I called my OB, and she's like, "Let's get you in. Let's get you checked out." And as soon as I got there, and mind you, like, I'm super concerned that I could be miscarrying, which I've had miscarriages in the past. And so because of this, they did an ultrasound, and it looked like I had a subchorionic hemorrhage. But it was very small. They said it was super normal, and then it would very likely heal on its own. So time goes by, another week goes by, and I come back for a follow-up appointment, and everything looked good. At that point, I was 6 weeks, and baby looked good. It was still too early to see a heartbeat, but there was definitely growth since the last scan, and the subchorionic hemorrhage had resolved. But I was still having a little bit of cramping, even though I was taking the progesterone. And by that following week, I started spotting again after it had cleared up for, almost 2 weeks. And, the doctor was like, and this was on a weekend, so they were like, "Oh yeah, you should definitely go into the emergency room and just see what's going on, see if the hemorrhage has opened up or if there's something else going on." So I go into the emergency room, and they're like, they do the ultrasound, and they're like, "There's nothing in here." And I'm, mind you, I had only just been spotting, so I was very confused, because I was like, I haven't passed anything. How can it just disappear? And they were like, "We don't know, but that we don't find anything on the ultrasound." And I'm like, this is crazy, because I have an ultrasound from last week, and there's definitely something in there. So they called my OB, and she was like, "I need her to come in first thing Monday morning." So this was on a Sunday. So they want me coming in the next day, to get checked out, because she was worried that I might have an ectopic pregnancy, especially since my blood work was showing that it was still going up. So I go in the next morning, and she does an ultrasound, and immediately she sees the baby. She's like, "I don't know if they just were terrible at their job or what happened, but the baby's still there." However, since my last scan the week prior, there had been no growth. And so by 7 weeks, they should have been able to detect a heartbeat. And there was no heartbeat, and the measurement was showing still 6 weeks. So the first course of action that I was offered was a D&C. And I'm like, absolutely not. I have heard too many horror stories of people being scheduled for a D&C, and they just gave it a little bit more time, and the baby was able to grow a little bit, and there was a heartbeat, and it's perfectly healthy, and they were able to have a completely normal pregnancy. So I'm like, no, we're just gonna wait. And so I had made an appointment for the following week, and that week was absolutely awful. Mentally, emotionally, I'm just praying and praying, praying that God will do a miracle. And halfway through the week, I start bleeding, like properly bleeding, bright red bleeding, not just spotting or brown spotting. And by that following Monday, when I had the appointment, I had thought I passed it. I had passed a couple large clots, and so I thought I had miscarried. And I did my ultrasound, and they were like, "Nope, baby's still in here, still no heartbeat, still no growth. It's definitely passed. but your body hasn't fully discovered it yet, or maybe it's only just starting to. And so they were like concerned that, this could cause infection and all this different stuff. So they were like really pushing the D&C. And I'm like, I really don't want to, I don't want surgery. I'm nothing against, having surgery when you need it. But I didn't have an infection, and I was already starting to bleed. So I prefer to go the natural route. That's who I am. I don't like, extreme intervention if I can avoid it. And so, of course, at that point, all hope is gone, and the baby has passed, and I am miscarrying. And so, now I'm just praying that I can pass the baby naturally. And so, the bleeding gets worse. And mind you, during this time, the placenta had still been growing, and so had the gestational sac. The baby had not. So when I did miscarry, actually the next day or 2 days after my appointment, it was more of like an 8-week miscarriage. It was a little bit different than the miscarriages I'd had in the past, where they were early enough that I wasn't able to see anything or catch anything. So this time, there was definitely, a gestational sac and tissue and remains, that I was able to catch, praise God. My other, and I was able to do it naturally. So that was a blessing. And I was really thankful to God for allowing my body to do it. And I know that doesn't happen for everybody. I mean, missed miscarriages are a real thing. And this was teetering on the edge of that, because it did go for about a week and a half to 2 weeks before my body realized that the baby had passed, before I actually started bleeding. And then it took some time, to actually deliver it. But the good thing is because I was able to, pass the baby naturally, now I can bury it. Now I can have closure. And my concern for the D&C was, I'm not scared of a surgery or anything, but I did not want the remains of my unborn child, that had passed, to be trash, to end up, getting poked and prodded in some sort of, facility where they're, doing, tests on it to see, if it was a boy or a girl, or, was there any, abnormal, chromosomes or genomes or whatever it was. I didn't want that. And so I wanted to have that closure. And so that was kind of like my big hold on not taking the D&C. But on the other hand, it was quite graphic. I haven't experienced anything like it before. I mean, I've birthed 3 live children. I've had 3 miscarriages in the past. So this would have been my 4th miscarriage. And, I know that some women miscarry even further along. And so you are delivering a baby. You are. You still have to contract. You still have to have, discharge in blood. And then this is really graphic and TMI, I know, but it's what it is, and it's awful. And, you have to go through it physically, which some people just don't want to do. They just like, get it out of me. I don't want to deal with it. And to each is your own. But for me, it was like, even if my child's life was really short and had only just begun and ended before it could even have a future, which is hard, it was still mine. It was mine. And I wanted it to have the respect it deserved and the dignity it deserves as a child of mine. And, you know, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. So anyways, long story short, that was my experience. And, after it passed, it was, all of the cramping and bleeding and all of that stuff kind of calmed down, pretty quickly after that. And I still go in next week, to just, for another ultrasound to make sure, everything passed, and there's nothing still in there, and, I'm still healthy. And again, I mean, for some other women, this may not be the same situation. If you're at risk of infection, or if you're starting to develop signs of sepsis or hemorrhaging or whatever, I mean, that's totally different. Like, a miscarriage can be life-threatening, but I think it's important to, kind of read your body and read what's happening and gauge whether it is on the severe side, or if it's just, it's just doing its natural process of recognizing that the child has passed and it's time to deliver that. So that's what I did. I just leaned into that through a lot of prayer and discernment. And yeah, so it was really terrible. It was really awful. And unlike my previous miscarriages, I actually have something that I can bury and I can have closure. And, I'm a Christian, and I believe that all people are created in the image of God, and that we all have value and we are all unique. And there's no one the same. That's not even just a belief. That's, biology. Every human being has its own unique set of genetics that has never been and never will be again. And so, this child of mine that is past is unique, and I'm thankful that, I got to be its mom for as long as it was around, and I get to bury it with dignity, and I get to have that closure. And not everybody gets that. Not everybody gets that. And if you are experiencing something similar, if you are going through, the one of the worst things a person can go through, which is the loss of your child, loss of a loved one, whether it is via miscarriage, no matter what stage, whether you're early on or you're later on, or whatever it is, find my one takeaway that I would like to leave with you is, if you can find a way to give the dignity and respect to the person and thank the Lord for the time that they were in your life, and then you can pursue closure in that way. And if you can, bury the person, there's a lot of value in that. And don't think it's weird. We have, as a human race, in every culture, all throughout history, what makes a huge difference between, obviously on a spiritual level, I believe that we're created in the image of God. We are created in the image of God. And so there's, that superior ethics that applies, that is grounded in something higher than ourselves. But then also, what distinguishes us from, everything else in the world is that we recognize those relationships, we mourn them, and we do have processes of, giving respect and dignity to our dead and burying them. And that's nothing to say about like cremation or not cremation. I don't know that. But I do know that, having closure is really important, and giving respect to the person that has their bodies, that have passed. And so, I hope that it's not really encouraging necessarily, but I hope that is, helpful, because in society today, in the world that we live in today, there's so much noise about preborn children not having the humanity enough to be valued for anything. That it's just tissue, it's just cells. Well, we're all just tissue. We're all just a clump of cells. Some with more than others, some more developed than others. But we are all valuable because we are human. Our humanity is what creates our value. No matter how small you are, no matter your location, no matter your development, any of those things does not matter. If you have a unique genetic code of your own and you're human, you are deserving of human rights and deserving of value and deserving of dignity. And I believe all people should have the dignity of, being honored for being human, even in their death. And so, it is a sad thing. And I think that as women, we need to be more respectful of other women who experience miscarriage, the loss of their child, and not downplay the value and the pain how it affects somebody, because it's like, oh, it was just so early, or oh, it was just so little, or oh, it was all these different things. Like, no, it was still a person. It was still their child. And that's, that needs to be respected. And so I wanted to share my experience and how I am coping with it and how I am approaching it. And again, I'm not everybody, but this is how I am, and this is how I think. And, if I can encourage anybody or, help anybody to approach this in a grounded, biblical way, it may enable them to be able to get through this tragedy, which is what it is. It is a tragedy. Get through this tragedy knowing A, they're not alone, A, that their baby was valuable, was human, was deserving of the dignity and respect that they are pursuing, what they're wanting to pursue, if that is to bury their child or to give a memorial of some kind, or some sort of moment of prayer, a time of acknowledgement over that little person's life, however short it was. I think that that's a good thing. And I think that is a good way of respecting the blessing that you were given, even if it didn't last. And I think all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. That's what God says. I mean, if you love him and you seek him and you submit to him, he will work everything together for the good. Even if you don't understand it in the thick of it, even if you're going through a trial, even if you're going through a tragedy, even if you're going through refinement, whatever it is, ultimately, like, he's doing this, in some way. He's not doing this. He's allowing this to, in some way, bring you to another stage of your life. On the other side of this time of heartache, there's a new season waiting for you. And in this moment of pain and of sorrow and of grief and all the things, you are growing in strength, in clarity. You are spiritually growing. You don't feel like it. You feel like you're holding on to a thread, but you are growing, because ultimately, when other trials come that are not as extreme, you will be able to put them in perspective, right? You'll say, okay, like, once upon a time, this would have tore me down, but I just went through that. And comparatively, that ain't nothing. And I made it through this, and I'm going to make it through that. And so, just pray, bring it to the Lord's feet. And I just want you to know that you are loved. You are not alone. I'm going through this right now. And right this very minute, like, I think I've cried all that I can cry, at least for the moment, until it hits me again. But that's how I'm able to even have this little, like, vlog. But yeah, you're going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. And women are experiencing this all over the place. And it sucks. But there is a light. There is. And do whatever you need to do, but I think that there's value in giving a time of tribute and recognition to what was lost, which is a valuable human being created in the image of God, so that you can have closure. And I'm burying it. That's what I'm going to do. So God bless you all. And, if you're going through something too, make a comment, and I will, keep you in my prayers. I'll pray for you, and maybe you can pray for me too.